Well, after that that introduction, I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. But he made me sound like Bambi. Isn't he cute? Sweet little thing. When the French writer Voltaire, the building that I'm showing you there had been standing for about 300 years when the French writer Voltaire was on his deathbed. And Voltaire was not a very religious man, but the local priest was a great optimist. And he came to visit Voltaire on his deathbed. And he said to Voltaire, "Monsieur Voltaire, will you now repent of all your sins and cease embracing the devil and all his works?" And Voltaire replied, "This is no time to be making enemies." Now, I realise we're running a little late, so I'll make you the promise that Henry VIII made to all his wives. I won't keep you too long. You can tell that because these are my notes. Short and sweet. Now, there's a bit of a problem here. I was given these strict instructions. They sent to England. They said, "Don't bloody well come unless you're prepared to stand up and reveal this one thing that's going to make all the difference to everyone." And then they said, "And you've got 2 hours to do it in." So I thought, well, you know, that should take 3 or 4 minutes. What do I talk about for the rest of the time? So I'm going to break a few rules here. I will do what I was told to do, otherwise they'll send me back. It will be like the show at the Apollo where somebody comes along and drags you off. So I'm going to do that, but also I'm going to try and give you a few ideas. I'm going to give you a few things that I found have worked for me over the last 50 years. Would you like that? Would that make good? How many of you, by the way, have to write copy or judge copy? How many of you have to write copy or judge copy? Yeah, you see, the thing about copy is that it's the only thing that doesn't cost you any more, whether it's good or bad. So I'm going to show you a bit of copy and try and explain 1 or 2 things. And some of the stuff that I've written myself, because the main reason for that is not because it's brilliant, it's because I knew what I was doing when I was writing it. Frequently getting drunk, actually. You're probably wondering what this is doing up here. I was at this place almost exactly 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks and 2 days ago. You know the man that sort of the mastermind behind ETR is Bill Bonner, who, like all great men, is a copywriter. Yeah? I'm not biased, you know. And he's got a chateau in France, but this is not his chateau. I've never seen his chateau. This is David Ogilvy's chateau, and that's where I was. I was spending a weekend with his widow, and I'll talk to you about that a little later. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do, and I hope to God the technology works because it didn't this morning. I follow research very carefully, as I'm sure you do, and everyone says nobody will watch a video for more than 2 minutes. So it's going to be very difficult for you because I'm going to show you 1 or 2 videos that last as long as 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So I hope I can retain your attention. Now, you spent the last couple of days listening to people talking about marketing, so I thought that you might like a change. But before I do give you a little change, a little entertainment, I'm going to take you to a rather more superior area than the one we've been occupying. But before that, I'd like to give you something. Would you like 101 helpful marketing ideas? Would that help you? Good. You get one every few days. Marketers all over the world read them, including quite a few multimillionaires and at least one billionaire. And my friend Yannick Silver described them as distilled wisdom, which is very kind of him. What he really meant was that they're so bloody obvious that anyone could have thought of them, but I wrote them down. Okay. So all you have to do is go to this address, www.draytonbirdcommonsense.com, and register, and they'll start coming to you. And you'll also get how many people here have read Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising? David Ogilvy said that no man should have any business in advertising until he's read this book at least 7 times. So when you go there, you'll also be able to download that book, which is 48 pages long, the best book ever written about advertising or marketing. It takes about an hour to read, and obviously it's free. The question is, why did I put this first? I was actually interviewed in New Delhi on the news. I don't know I was on the news. It must have been a very slow news day. And the man was interviewing about marketing, and he said, "What do you think? Do you agree with the statement that was just given by Diego that internet marketing is direct marketing on steroids?" And I said, "Not really." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "It would work better if it were." It's actually, I think it's accelerated direct marketing, but all the things that I'm going to talk about really apply to any medium. But the one thing to remember about direct marketing was written by the late Richard V. Benson, who said, there are only 2 rules in direct marketing. Rule number 1, test everything. And rule number 2, kindly refer to rule number 1. So, the reason that I put this up first was that a friend of mine, who is a Slovenian, who speaks at my business school every year, because I run a little business school every year in London, told me that he'd found that if he put his free offer at the beginning of his presentation, he got twice as many replies as if he just put it at the end. So get writing. Otherwise he'll be wrong, won't he? So I'm going to talk to you about the secret weapon that most marketers ignore. And I only put that just to make sure I'm in the right place. And the first thing I would like to draw to your attention is a remark by the great Ernest Hemingway, who said this: "The most essential gift for a good writer is a built-in, shock-proof bullshit detector." Yeah? And what's wrong with most marketing, particularly internet marketing, is there is far too much bullshit floating around. Yeah? You get a lot of it every day. It's boring and it's counterproductive. And I would like to ask you whether it is not possible to do a little bit better than this sort of thing. Somebody writes and tells me 3,788% profits are common. And I said, really? I just saw 6 flying pigs go past the bloody window, yeah? You know? Somebody else says, hey, honey. I wonder what she wants. Then somebody else as a subject line says, did you do this? Really captivating. Somebody else says, Insiders HQ is live. Get it now. Why? Then someone, Dell, who incidentally are busy destroying a great brand. Shall I tell you, would you like to know why? Because all Dell's marketing is based on discounting. And this is what destroyed General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. If you keep on discounting your product, eventually even the most stupid customer thinks they must be making shit, you know, if they have to keep on giving away stuff. So that's what Dell's doing. So there's a brilliant, great value Dell and HP business. Come on, you know. 183 pre-written ClickBank autoresponder messages. I mean, is this imaginative? Is this creative? And this is one sent to me regularly, proposal for your website, www blah, blah, blah. Yeah? It's not really tremendously good, is it? Here's one that I loved the other day. Your free $10,000 training. Why are you being so nice to me? Hi, Drayton. Melvin here. How are you doing? Today I have an extra special free gift that will actually help you dominate the search engine and explode. Have you noticed how many people promise they're going to explode your online profits, you know? If somebody would write to me and say, I'm going to explode your underpants, you know, something, you know, get on the next plane to England. My buddy, you know, so all these people have got buddies, they got more friends, you know, they got so many friends. My good friend, so-and-so, whom I've never met, got this great shift for you. Dear, oh dear. Yeah? What I like about this is that Melvin is just, obviously, very wisely, has moved to Ecuador. Who's going to find him there? Does he exist? What's the alternative to all this rubbish?
I'm very grateful to the Academy's Board of Directors for this happy tribute, and to Frank for coming here especially to give it to me. And, well, to all the fellows who worked so hard in finding those and assembling those film clips. You know, I may never look at this without remembering the quiet patience of the directors who were so kind to me, who were kind enough to put up with me more than once, some of them even 3 or 4 times. There was Howard Hawks, Hitchcock, the late Liam McCary, George Stevens, George Cukor, and Stanley Donen, and all the writers. There was Philip Barry, Dory Sherry, Bob Sherwood, Ben Hecht, dear Clifford Odets, Sidney Sheldon, and more recently, Stanley Shapiro and Peter Stone. Well, I trust they and all the other directors, writers, and producers and leading women have all forgiven me what I didn't know. I realize it's conventional and usual to praise one's fellow workers on these occasions, but why not? Ours is a collaborative medium. We all need each other. That's how we exist. And what better opportunity is there to publicly express one's appreciation and admiration and affection for all those who contribute to so much to each of our welfare. I've never been a joiner or a member of any particular social set, but I've been privileged to be a part of Hollywood's most glorious era. And yet, tonight, thinking of all the empty screens that are waiting to be filled with marvelous images and ideologies, points of view, whatever, and considering all the students who are studying film techniques in the universities throughout the world, and the astonishing young talents that are coming up in our midst, I think there's an even more glorious era right around the corner. So, before I leave you, I want to thank you very much for signifying your approval of this. I should cherish it until I die, because probably no greater honor can come to any man than the respect of his colleagues. Thank you. So long.
My mother's family is the Colston family, and if you go to Bristol, which is where Cary Grant was born, you will find Colston Square and Colston School and Colston Avenue, and a statue of my ancestor, Edward Colston, in the main square. That's not the reason I'm showing you that. I'm going to show you quite a few clips because all this enthusiasm has probably been getting you down. Did you like that? Okay.
I just want to... Oh, I can't resist. I'm supposed to quit right here. But, oh yes. But in view of the fast things that I just said, I don't know whether you know it or not, but I have a new hobby. I am collecting stories that I can actually prove are told among the Russian people. They make them up themselves, they tell them between themselves, reveals they got a great sense of humor, and they've also got a little cynical attitude about things in their country. And one of these stories, the one I'm going to tell you, I told to General Secretary Gorbachev, and he laughed. The story was an American and a Russian arguing about their two countries, and the American said, look, in my country I can walk into the Oval Office, I can pound the president's desk and say, Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running our country. And the Russian said, I can do that. The American said, you can? He says, yes. I can go into the Kremlin, to the General Secretary's office, pound his desk and say, Mr. General Secretary, I don't like the way President Reagan's running his country.
Now you're probably sitting there thinking, what the hell is Drayton Bird talking about? I'm going to put you to the test in a little bit. I'm going to put you through a few tests, actually, because I'm going to show you a series of tests that I've conducted over the years to see what works and what doesn't. We'll see how you do, but you've got to guess what I'm talking about as I show you these little examples.
Well, say, why don't we just ad-lib a little something together then, huh?
Whip it up right here on the spot, huh?
Throw it away.
Like the one we've been rehearsing for 2 weeks.
A Babbitt met a bromide on the avenue one day and held a conversation in their own peculiar way. They both were solid citizens, they both had been around, and as they spoke you clearly saw their feet were on the ground. Hello, how are you? How's the folks? What's new? I'm great. That's good. Ha ha, knock wood. Well, well, that's life. What do you know? How's a wife? Gotta run. Oh my. Ta-ta. Olive oil. Goodbye. 10 years went quickly by for both these substantial men, and then it happened that one day they...
What have they got in common? Cary Grant. Apart from show business, Ronald Reagan. These two. Well...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present the Bob Hope Humanitarian Award to my dear friend, Mr. George Clooney.
Don't do that. No, because then I feel like... Well, thank you. Okay, don't do that, because then I feel like maybe I'm sick and I don't know it, and you guys... You all know, and I feel really bad about it. Bob and Dolores Hope were friends of my aunt, and I spent many nights at Rosemary's house listening to them tell stories and sing. And if you look at everything that they've accomplished over their lives, all the charitable work and the USO tour, they're the best version of the term celebrity. You know, there are a lot of you here.
Okay, George Clooney.
This is my favorite email of all time. I got this about 3 years ago, and I've saved it ever since, and it is an absolute classic because of the subject line, among other things. Alter significantly the denudation of Panglossian corporate communications. Now, who can argue with that? If I say to you, you better start altering the denudation of Panglossian, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And look at the way it begins. Dear docent colleague. That will strike fear and terror into their hearts. A malefactoring challenge entrepreneurial enterprises face today. Oh, yeah, that's what I want to know. What is the malefactoring challenge? Is multiple layer communication with a diverse and diffuse geographically dispersed staff. At that point, your teeth come out. Indefatigable meretriciousness can generate negativism. You bet it can. So to repeat my analysis of this, as I did once before, assuming that my Alzheimer's is in remission. This is the way that communicator would have written the nursery rhyme, Mary had a little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, regarding whose cuticular the fluff exterior was white and kinked in each particular. On each occasion when the lass would go a-gallivating, the little quadruped likewise was there perambulating. One day it did accompany her to the knowledge dispensary, which to all rules and precedents was recklessly contrary. Immediately whereupon the pedagogue superior, exasperated, did eject the lamb from the interior. Then Mary, on beholding such performance arbitrary, suffused her eyes with saline drops from glands called lacrimary. And all the students grew thereat tumultuously hilarious, and speculated on the case with wild conjectures various. What makes the lamb love Mary so, the students asked the teacher. She paused a moment, then she tried to diagnose the creature. Ah, pecus amarem Mary habit omnia temporum. Thanks, teacher dear, the scholars cried, and awe crept darkly o'er 'em.
It's a funny old world, you know. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to South Africa. And the last time I went to South Africa, I went on safari with Herschel Gordon Lewis and his wife. And I just happened to find this clip, but it's again, what's he got in common? What's that got in common with the other people I've shown? Or this, for instance. My friend Joe Holmes is now a horse. Joe always said when he died he'd like to become a horse. One day, Joe died. Early this May, I saw a horse that looked like Joe drawing a milk wagon. I sneaked up to him and I whispered, "Is it you, Joe?" He said, "Yes, and am I happy?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm now wearing a comfortable collar for the first time in my life." My shirt collars always used to shrink and murder me. In fact, one choked me to death. That's why I died. "Goodness, Joe," I explained, "why didn't you tell me about your shirts sooner? I would have told you about Arrow shirts. They never shrink." Yeah, okay. So I'm still talking about the same thing. Still talking about the same thing. How often do you buy a car? That's too often. Buy a Volvo, keep it a long time, and get out from under car payments for a change. That's written by Ed McCabe of Scaly McCabe's Clothes, who I met their people, and I had dinner with David Ogilvy in Frankfurt. And Marvin Sloves was at the same table as my wife and me, and David and his wife.
Happiness is a cigar called Hamlet, the mild cigar.
Making the same point, here is what many people regard as the best ever television commercial, although I think the one before it was pretty good.
Have you ever wondered how the man who drives a snowplow drives to the snowplow? So you can stop wondering. This one drives a Volkswagen. So you can stop wondering.
That was by Doyle Dane Bernbach, done by Julian Koenig and George Lois, who I used to work for in the mid-1960s. I wish I had their talent. There's another, I've been very fortunate in my career because I've known probably the three most successful copywriters in the direct marketing industry over the last 30 or 40 years, one of whom was Bill Jamie, who gave me absolutely the worst bloody hangover I've ever had in my life in San Francisco. And here's a little letter that he wrote to get renewals for New York Magazine. And I would say, as I read it, please do not try to do this at home. And I'll explain why in a minute. If you just as soon see the plaza torn down and never pay any attention to Wall Street and already know everything about the men who challenged John Lindsay for mayor and couldn't care less about crime and pollution and sons and narcotics and traffic, and don't give a hoot what happens to Welfare Island, and find street trees a bore and have no interest in whether they build a new jet port or put up a bridge between Long Island and Connecticut or finish Interstate 80 West, and don't mind if the World Trade Center does kill TV reception and hate Central Park, and feel that any celebrity who gives interviews is an out-and-out exhibitionist and never go to the theatre or galleries or ball games or movies or concerts or read books or do crosswords and never go shopping and never eat out and don't wear clothes. You don't need New York anymore, and you're right to let your subscription expire, which it has. Only Bill could write a sentence that long and get away with it. All the things I've shown you have one thing in common. Here's another one. That's by the same agency that did the Hamlet commercial. This is also from the agency George Lois and Julian Koenig founded, which is where I worked. You can't read it properly, but you'll get the idea behind the headline. It's a chair, and it's got a piece of paper under it, and the headline is, "If your Harvey Probber chair wobbles, straighten your floor." This is something that Mary Ellen showed yesterday. Your kids text you from the next room and ask for dinner. Your roots are down to your ears. You think Justin Bieber is part of the family that moved in next door 6 months ago. Wearing sweatpants is dressed up for you. The things floating in your fish tank for the last 2 weeks are the fish. You call your Mac sweaty. The last girls' night out was to see the first Sex and the City movie. You consider spending 4th of July with your customer service rep instead of your in-laws. You just opened an invitation to a Memorial Day picnic. The kids in the vampire movies are tanner than you. Yes, this is funny, and I send it to put a smile on your face. However, if you remotely recognize yourself in just one or two of these actions, it would behoove you to read this report right now. Cheers, me. That has the same quality as the things I've been showing you.
Hello, Carlos. I hope you don't mind if I call you Carlos. I can't pronounce your other name. Have you ever made a mistake? I tell you the worst mistake I ever made in business. It was many years ago, perhaps before you were born. A man came to see me, and he said, "I've been asked to find an advertising agency for a company who I represent. And I wonder if you would like the account." I said, "What do they sell? What do they manufacture? What do they advertise?" He said, "Office machinery." And I shook my head and I said, no, I don't advertise office machinery, things like that. I only do consumer accounts. He said, well, it's an interesting company. You could buy some of their stock for $2 or $3 a share. Well, I'd never heard of the company, so I said I wasn't interested in that. And I recommended a friend who'd just started another agency and was broke, and he came over and he got the account. Well, the account that I'd never heard of, that I refused that day, was called Xerox. Now perhaps I have a chance to undo that immortal error I made that day and go to work for you in Australia. Jeff Lindley has put together a really terrific team, I know them, to work for you, and I would like to help them. And if you hire us, if you and Tim would like to come over and visit me and spend 2 or 3 days with me in France, and bring 1 or 2 people from our agency in Sydney, maybe we could get together and sit down and talk for a couple of days about the sort of job that you need to achieve your purpose. I hope you'll hire us, and I hope you'll come. You'll be very welcome, and then at last I can forget that awful mistake I made years ago. Never too late.
When I was the creative director of Ogilvy and Mather Direct around the world, we were pitching for the Xerox account, and I rang up David and said, will you do a video for us? And that's what he did. Lovely man. But that's also about the thing I'm talking to you about, which is the thing that people ignore, which is incredibly powerful, which beats all the formulae you can possibly imagine. Now you can tell me what the missing word is. In a study by the University of Waterloo, 85% of the respondents, both men and women, said that blank, 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 blank was the principal reason for their attraction to the opposite individual. What was it? Well, David Ogilvy took me to dinner at Claridge's in London one night, and he turned to me and he said, do you know the secret of success in this business, Drayton? And I said, no, David, what is it? And he said, charm. Charm. Huh? That is the missing ingredient that will cut through everything. Yeah? 2 examples. About 140 years ago, a lady, by coincidence, happened to spend a little time with the 2 great political opponents in England, who were Gladstone and Disraeli. And when somebody asked her what was the difference between the 2 of them, she said, I was with Mr. Gladstone for quite a while, and I had the overwhelming impression that he was extraordinarily able and wonderful. And when I met Mr. Disraeli, after I'd spent an hour with him, I had the impression that I was wonderful. But I would suggest to you that charm is the ability that some people have to make both of you feel that you're wonderful. Yeah? My friend Denison Hatch put together a book which I still steal ideas from, with another guy who's no longer with us called Axel Anderson, called $1 Million Mailings. And about 18 years ago, I was speaking in Chicago, and I was extremely flattered when Axel Anderson came to listen to me. And he came up and spoke to me, and I said, I got your book the other day, and I think it's great. What did you discover that was really interesting? You must have discovered quite a few things. And he said, you know something? He said, every single one of those mailings appealed it's either flattered people or it's appealed to greed, or both, yeah? It either flattered people or appealed to greed, or both. Yeah? The most powerful, the most potent combination you can possibly have if you wish to persuade people to do what you want, that's it. What's in it for them, and make them feel good about themselves. You like to feel good about yourself, and I'll tell you something. There has never been a time in my life, or at least since I was a child, when there was also a terrible depression, when people needed to feel better about themselves. Yeah? We are beset by large organisations who ignore us. When I came to America a few days ago, I always have a phone because I come here a lot, and I have an American phone. And I tried to send a text to my daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 52-year-old son, which just shows that once I'd found out how it was done, I just kept going. And the machine said, you have insufficient funds, but it said on the machine, you have $6.78 credit. Yeah? I was really, really pissed off. So naturally I did what would you like to talk to somebody at Verizon? Ladies and gentlemen, there is nobody at Verizon. There's nobody there. Nobody there. It's all run by phantoms, yeah? And we're all pissed off about it. Did you know a survey about 4 years ago discovered that the principal thing that pisses people most off in modern life is automated answering machines. Just automated answering machines. So everybody's feeling really frustrated, and anything you can do to make them feel good about themselves is going to open a challenge, a sort of channel in to talk to them, yeah? So charm is the secret. I'm going to show you a few more examples of things that I think are charming, but commercial, work very well. I'm going to do a little test to see how much you've learnt in the last few days. And I'm going to show you one or two things that I think are interesting and make the odd suggestion, and then you can all say, thank God that's over. So here's something that was done by my colleagues in Frankfurt. And the way most people would have done this, they would have said, win a free Mercedes. This was aimed at Avon customers. What it actually says is, over 100 new colours from Avon. Win a Mercedes that matches your lipstick. Bit different, isn't it? Yeah. Bit of charm. This was done by a girl who came to me when I was the creative director in London. She'd just been fired. And she was the PA of my managing director, because I'm incapable of managing anything. I'm totally incompetent. And she'd just been fired, and she came up to me in tears. I've been fired, I must get another job. Can you help me? I said, of course. I said, didn't you used to work in publishing? And she said, yes. And so I said, well, why don't you try copywriting? Oh, I couldn't do that, I've got to get a job. I said, Canadian girl, she's called Randy Hornfelder. Wonderful name, Randy Hornfelder. I used to call her Haunch Flinger. So she got a job. Eventually I got her to take a copy assignment, and within 18 months she was a creative director in another agency, which just shows I never should have done anything for her. But this is one of those inserts that go into the magazines, you know, and fall out. You know why inserts work? You know, they irritate you, don't they? There is a direct relationship between the degree to which things irritate you and the degree to which you notice them. So there's the inside. And of course it is a list building exercise. Try and find out a little bit about you and about what you're trying to do. And I have to tell you that I'm going to talk very briefly about this at the end, because everybody else has had a formula, and I feel I would be left out if I didn't have a formula. I I feel remiss. People go saying, what's the matter with Bird? Why didn't he have a formula? I shall have a formula, don't worry. This was done by a colleague of mine in the Netherlands, a piece of direct mail. And I should explain, at the time it ran, there was a commercial for Felix cat food which had a dancing cat. You know how they can make cats dance, yeah? And so this letter went out. This letter is really meant for your cat, but since I don't know his name, I'm addressing it to you. Perhaps you know me. The name is Felix. I am the cat that made dancing a favourite sport amongst Dutch cats. You know, from television, from, ooh, that tastes terrific, which was the line they had. Ooh, that tastes terrific, yeah? Nowadays it appears that a lot of cats try to dance too, but not all of them manage to do very well. That is why I've prepared a cat placemat on which the proper steps are explained. It's a very nice placemat, if I may say so, and handy too, because not every cat has the finest of table manners and so on, yeah? Your cat is getting it for free if before the 31st of October you tell us his name and answer a few questions, and it came with a leaflet which looked like this. For those of you whose Dutch is a little sketchy, the cat is saying, ooh, that's not easy. And inside, there you are, the placemat on which you get free, and all you have to do is to answer a few questions about your cat, one of which is, what is your cat's birthday? And then they sent a mailing to the people, addressed to the cat, of course, on the birthday, a birthday card for your cat. Charming. Yeah? Charming. As I go along, I'm going to try and point out a few things that you might find useful. One of the things you might find useful is that there are essentially 4 different types of illustration. The illustration that convinces most is a photograph. The illustration that attracts most attention is a cartoon. Yeah? So sticking a cartoon at the beginning of things, if you wish to attract attention, is a good idea. If you wish to convince somebody of something, then you need a photograph. The other 2 types, of course, are graphs and charts, which convey information very quickly, and illustrations, which, as a general rule, don't do very much for anybody. When I got my first job as a creative director in 1964, I'd started reading a lot of books about advertising. And so I started conducting lots of tests. And I remember I tested a photograph against an illustration to sell a washing machine. And responses went up 50%. And one of the things I love about this business is you can try something, you know, and it won't cost you any more, and it will make a lot more money. And the thing that I like about the internet, most of my own marketing is done online, is that I can think of an idea in the morning, and I know by lunchtime what a bloody idiot I was to try it in the first place. That incidentally says I've got something in here which will certainly interest you. Yeah? And I think Diego can probably correct me. I think seguro also has an implication about insurance, and it's from an insurance company. Sí, muy bien. I mentioned Bill Jamie. This is one of his mailings for the New Yorker. Pink splut kaplot. When life glooms over, open here. Brighten your outlook, $49.09. And that's what the mailing looked like. I do a talk sometimes about just a small selection of the mistakes that I've made. One of which was to send out a publication with a mailing which was trying to get people to subscribe to, which is a terrible mistake because no publication can ever live up to all the wonderful things you say about it. So I'm not, you see, most of the people who are here, the one thing I would say that Tom was a little bit misleading about, he said I was rich and successful. I'm not. My life has been one series of disasters, punctuated by occasional moments of triumph. And how does it begin? If you have days when almost everything goes wrong, when the headlines are scary, when the stock market is down, when the bureaucrats have done it again, when rain is predicted for the weekend, when they've had the audacity to serve you a bread pudding that contains only 2 raisins, there's a suggestion that can cheer you. The New Yorker. All marketing revolves around a very, very simple thing. It revolves around finding a problem and suggesting a solution. Yeah? That's all it is. People will give you a lot of bullshit. That's all it is. Yeah? I'm a working mum. I'd like to make some money without feeling guilty. That's my problem, my solution. Yeah? That's all you have to think about if you want to succeed. Find a problem that people really care about, really worry about, and find a solution. This was done by the best creative director in America, a friend of mine. I'm hoping to see him. I keep on trying to meet him for lunch when we get to New York. And he's never there, and I'm not there. And they used to give awards, and I suppose they still do in the advertising agency business. And one year, Ogilvy and May, the director in New York, won more awards than all the other agencies in the world put together. And the reason for this was very largely due to Stan Winston, who is an extraordinarily funny man with a very, very good capacity for martini, I seem to recall. And he had this talent. You know that once you've got a business going, the talent you have to develop, yeah, is the ability to make people follow you. Yeah? Preferably make them love you. Ogilvy was a good example of that. One day I rang up our agency in Singapore, and it was late there. I wanted to talk to somebody there. Can I speak to Kathy? She's gone home. Who are you? My name's Chris Fu. Oh, I said, well, I'm Drayton Bird. Could you tell her I rang? And Chris said, I'm reading your book. I said, really? I said, oh, that's very kind of you. How come? He said, David Ogilvy told me to. This guy was a trainee. David had this uncanny ability to... The only thing I would say about myself, actually, is the few talents I have is that I'm very good at choosing people. Probably because I realised fairly early that I couldn't do it all myself and do very little of it. But Stan had this talent to make people perform. You know, what you have to do if you wish to build a business is this. You have to persuade other people to do things for you that they would never do for anybody else. Yeah? And you have to persuade them that they can do things that they never dreamt they could do. That's the art of leadership. There are lots of managers, yeah? Very few leaders. So, one of the secrets if you're communicating with people is timing, yeah? So this goes out to sell whiskey. It's only logical that we finally meet after 200 years, it said on the envelope, and inside was a mailing. Now, Harvey Mackay once observed that something you know about your customer may be more important than anything you know about your product. Yeah? The process of persuasion is extremely simple. I say something to you that you cannot disagree with, yeah? And then I say something else which you cannot disagree with, and then I say something else which maybe you could disagree with, but you've just agreed with to the first two things and it sounds very plausible. And you take people hand in hand. You go, here you are, come on, take my hand, come on. Come with me, come with me, come on, come on, come on, come on. All the way to the order form, yeah? And you do it by making a series of statements that they find it hard to disagree with. And the easiest statement you can make is something about them that's true, or about something they've received that's true, yeah? Charlie Brower, who was the CEO of Batten, Barton, Durston and Osborne, the big advertising agency, which W.C. Fields described as having a name that sounded like a man dragging a heavy trunk down a flight of steps, was a very funny man, and when he retired, they printed his obituary after he died in the New York Times, and I read something I've never forgotten. He said, "Honesty is not only the best policy, it is rare enough nowadays to make you pleasantly conspicuous." So if the only thing I know about you is that I wrote to you on a certain date, and I write to you again, and it says a year again later we meet again, yeah, I'm going to succeed. But again, charming. This was sent out 20 odd years ago when I was speaking in New Zealand. It was hand-delivered to managing directors and marketing directors in Auckland and Wellington. It wasn't my idea. I wish I'd never had such a good idea as this. But 72% of them turned up. I was saying that one of my few talents is actually the ability to pick good people, and I was walking through our agency one day, and I saw this man sitting in our library, which is a rather grand way of describing a sort of hutch with books in it. So he was sitting there looking a bit bloody miserable. And I said, "Hi," I said, "What's your name?" He said, I'm Steve Harrison. I said, "Oh," I said, "How long have you been with us?" And he told me, and I said, "Do you like it?" And he said, "It's all right." So I said, "Tell me a bit about yourself." And it turned out he was a PhD. And I said, "What would you like to do?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to be a writer." And I said, "Well, has somebody cut your bloody hands off?" I said, "Go upstairs and get a brief from Chris Jones, the creative director," which he did. And when I left Ogilvy and Mather, he became creative director. And then, after he became creative director, he then started his own agency, which he sold for $1 million or $2 million about 5 years later. And I was saying I run this thing every year in London for 3 or 4 days, and I always get him to speak because he's an incredibly good speaker, and it's an example of his work. Now, one of the biggest problems in selling things is to sell things that people don't want. What a surprise, yeah? And one of the things they don't bloody well want is insurance, yeah? And one of the things they particularly don't want is a breakdown service at a time when most cars are so well made, they very rarely break down. So this is for the Automobile Association. And they'd sent out 5 mailings trying to get people to renew their membership. And then they came to Steve Harrison and asked if he'd got an idea. And this is in fact not a letter, it's actually a piece of cardboard which has this on the front. The yellow and black are the AA colours. Something to get you home if you don't restart your AA membership. And if you turn it over, you get this thick piece of cardboard coming through your door. On the other side, everyone, about, a great many of them, depending on where people live, they're all changed, yeah? Steve is very funny. We actually held my event the week before last, and he always makes me laugh. The first time I ever saw him speak, I didn't know he could speak. When I was just leaving Ogilvy and Mather, and he stood up, we were on a Greek island, and he said, "I want to talk to you about a business organisation which is extremely successful." And he described the business organisation in question. And then he said, "You're probably wondering what this organisation is that's run so well." And everyone said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's called the Mafia." For those of you who don't speak the dialect of Puglia, this is a little Italian, but it's only in the dialect of Puglia, probably spoken by a few people around Lecce, in Lecce to be exactly, and it's not spoken anywhere else. And what it means, it says, is out of his head. Fuori di capo, out of his head, yeah? Which I recommend as a good way to approach this business. The last time Steve was talking for me, he stood up and he said, "I want to talk to you about how hard it is to do what we do." And he said, suppose you write an advertisement. He said, and he said, it appears on page 16 of the Daily Telegraph. And he said, let's have a look at page 16 of the Daily Telegraph. Page 16 of the Daily Telegraph, very boring page. It's got the advertisement at the bottom, and above it's got the weather forecast and so on. And he said, had it ever occurred to you that the weather forecast is infinitely more interesting than anything you're ever going to write? That's the problem you face. In the notes for this talk, there was mentioned a mailing that I wrote, I think 2 years ago, for the world's largest supplier of legal information. So I thought I'd just show it to you in case you were interested. It took the marketing director about 6 months to persuade them to try any direct mail. They'd never done any direct mail. Yeah? They had a list of 2,500 firms, of whom 1,000 were the wrong addresses, which we found out because I said, we'll do it for you because it's a small job, we'll do it inside my agency. So I had girls from all over Europe doing things. And I, handwriting those yellow slips, yeah? And nobody, when I said not only did I think direct mail was a good idea, but it would be a good idea to send a letter out like this. Those are just things that draw attention to various aspects of it. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. They said, you're kidding. These are going to very, very busy legal executives. There's no bloody way they're going to read 6 pages. I said, well, humour me and send it out and see what happens. And that signature, by the way, is me forging the signature of the managing director. I sat there and wrote 1,500 signatures of Jonathan Brewer. The mailing went out, and it said you can ring up if you want to buy, or you can go to the website. And then we sent an email. They'd never sent direct mail out to anyone, so we sent an email out and said, I've never written to you before, and now I write to you twice in 1 week. Little bit of charm, yeah? The day that this little letter landed, at 10 o'clock, in fact at 9:47, a group of lawyers rang up and said, we'd like to have it. And that was £50,000, or about $75,000, one order. Yeah? So it was with great pleasure that I met the client, who didn't think it would work. The thing actually brought in over £1 million worth of orders, and the second wave of mailings, they said, we've just had an order for £100,000. Yeah? They just read the letter and they spent £100,000. Yeah? And I met them again recently, and I said, well, I was very pleased with what happened. And they said, well, you know the other one you did? And I said, yeah, I'd forgotten about that, because I found it so bloody difficult to understand. You know how it is when you do an exam, yeah? And you learn everything at the time, and then 3 days later you can't remember a bloody thing about it. That's me, yeah? And they said, well, you did another one. Oh, I said, yes, so I did. He said, that one pulled in £1.5 million worth of business, yeah? About $2.8 million. Just show you one thing, little trick I did. You know that this yellow thing makes a big difference, yeah? When they told me about the order, I said, oh, I'll write you another one. And they were really pissed off when I charged them money for it, because all I wrote was this. I just said at 9:47 a.m. on July the 17th this year, the 10 partners of a legal firm began to open the Morning Post, just as you're no doubt doing. And it was a 6-page letter about a new service being offered for the first time to medium-sized legal practices. Blah, blah, blah. If after reading what follows you're as interested as they are, your practice can test this service for 14 days at no cost and without obligation. All you need to do is pick up the phone and call. And then it was the same mailing, yeah? It's exactly the same mailing. I'm sure you all know that if you send out an email immediately after the email you've just sent out that just said, did you get this, or whatever, you know, you'll get anything up to 80% of the response of the first one. Yeah? Somebody I was talking to yesterday said they get 50%. I think it was Jason, actually, at the VTR. Always remember something very, very important, which people forget. that your customer wants to buy when your customer wants to buy, not when you want to sell. Yeah? So one of my clients sells temporary buildings, yeah? And last year, about 18 months ago, he said, I've just sold a building to somebody for £17,000, he said. And I've never spoken to the guy, because he tries to speak to all his prospects. And it was on the 16th follow-up, and I said, look, I told you, you've got to keep going, Anthony. And I wrote an article. I write articles for lots of, usually online magazines around the world. And I wrote an article saying, this guy sends out 16 follow-ups, blah, blah, blah. And my partner rang me up and he said, no, he doesn't. He sends out 108 now. Okay, it's time to see how good you are. Here are some tests. This is my client. Unfortunately, my partner has just been offered a job for double what I'm paying her by these people. They're the most successful people in a certain branch of financial services in England, and they did a test between this letter and this letter. The only difference, copy is exactly the same, is this thing, yeah? A simple formula to help you make money, invest £1,000, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? That summarizes the proposition. Yeah? Okay, all you have to do as marketers and human beings, always got to remember that even marketers are human beings, okay, is whether A would have done better than B. Because, you don't look at a letter for a long time. You just either start reading it or you don't. So, who thinks that A would have done better than B? Okay. And who thinks that B would have done better than A? Will all the people who said that B would have done better than A stand up, please? Okay. So most of you, so let's see how many of you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So the rest of you can applaud the people who got it right. Very difficult. I got it wrong. It's very difficult to get it right. But I can, the philosopher Wittgenstein once said that everything in life is perfectly clear afterwards. Unfortunately, life has to be lived forwards. Now, but I can tell you, I'm going to try and tell you as I go along why things work and why they don't. The reason that doesn't work is because it gives the game away. Yeah? A friend of mine called Joe Sugarman, I'm sure you may have heard of, he read my book and he said if I'd read it earlier, I would have made $500,000 more. And it was actually something I wrote about testing. And in his book, he says, look, the only purpose of each sentence is to get people to read the next sentence. So if you say something in a headline that gives the game away, yeah, people don't have to read on. So if you summarize it like that, people don't have to read on. This is the Prudential, who are clients of mine who drive me bloody crazy. Here are two advertisements selling a health plan, A and B. Now remember, the average advertisement seen for about 2 minutes, 2 seconds, yeah? So read it quickly. Read that one quickly. People don't normally get beyond the headline. The question is, which one did better, A or B? Who thinks that A would have done better than B? Okay. Who thinks that B would have done better than A? Most people chose A. How many people who chose got the last one right chose B? Stand up. Stand up. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got the first one right, did you? You did, yeah. Well, applaud them. They got it right. Yeah. Now, I told you the answer to start with. I said, don't give the game away. This just simply says, I should pay less for my health insurance. So bloody what? Yeah? This one did 10 times better because it offers you a benefit. It also did 10 times better because I wrote it, but that's another subject. Yeah. But it did 10 times better. They were about to close the division down. It was doing so badly. Yeah? Here's another one for you. 3 emails, the copy's exactly the same. Don't know what's happened to the A, B, and C. They've obviously dropped off. It's the heat, you know. A, B, C. Yeah. Copy's exactly the same, get 10 bingo cards, absolutely free. So who thinks that this one would have done best of the 3? Anybody? Anybody? Who thinks that this one would have done best of the 3? And who thinks that this one would have done best of the 3? So you're a knowledge. Has anybody also got the others right, that got this one right? How many of you? Let's see. Of the people who got everything right so far, got this one right? Pretty good. Pretty good. You're better than the senior executives at American Express, I can tell you that. I did a speech to them in Malaysia, in Penang, and after I'd done, there were 300 of them, very, very highly paid, and after I'd done 3, there were only 3 people standing up. So there you go. Here's a very old one, A and B. The only difference is where the headline is. Who thinks that A would have done better than B? And who thinks that B would have done better than A? See, I've only been talking to you for, well, it probably seems a lot longer to you, but just over an hour. They're giving me 2 hours. This could go on all night. The client actually wanted to run this one, and I said, you should test this one. This one won in a series of tests by between 27% and 125%. And the reason is, it's worth remembering, that when people look at a blank sheet of paper, their eyes go to about 1/3 down. Yeah? So, very unwise to have a headline at the top. Okay. A? I found this when I was speaking in the Philippines. So who thinks that A would have done better than B? And who thinks that B would have done better than A? Yeah. Let me tell you something. The course of advertising was changed permanently in 1904 when Albert Lasker, who had his office above a bar in Chicago and wanted to know what advertising was, somebody downstairs sent his card up and said, I understand you want to know what advertising is, because nobody had really defined it very simply. And if you send the card down again, I'll come up and tell you. So he sent the card down again, and a strapping ex-Mountie, Canadian Mountain called John Kennedy came up and said, you want to know what advertising is? Advertising is salesmanship in print. When you're looking at what you're doing, always ask yourself, would a salesman do that? A salesman would never insult the prospect. Yeah? Never insult the prospect. Yeah? The opposite of flattery. My biggest client is a home improvement firm, and the way that we really helped them was that my partner and I, the one that's leaving me, I don't know, she's got an interview with someone else today. I don't mind her leaving, actually. She's got an interview with Ogilvy and Mather, which is just about finished, so I'm I want to know which job she's going to take, because when she said she was looking for a job, I wrote to this client who do home improvement and said, could you give her a testimonial? And they said, we'd like to offer her a job as head of marketing services. And she said, no, thank you very much. I don't like your marketing director. So then we said to another client, the marketing director of Hargreaves Lansdowne, the people who I showed you the 2 letters from, yeah. And he immediately, the marketing director, rang up immediately and said, come and work for us, I'm not kidding. So they offered her a job last week, and now I'm sure Ogilvy and Mather will offer her a job, but there you are. But when we got this account, the first thing we did was we pretended that we wanted some new windows, and we got a salesman to come in and do a presentation. And my partner Marta, who's actually from Lecce in Italy and doesn't speak English very well, wrote a mailing which beat what they were doing before by 42% and increased their conversion to sales from 18% to 25%. And it's never been beaten since in 6 years. But it all started with getting a salesman pitch, yeah? Get a salesman to do a pitch to you. Here are 2 more. Drayton Bird's 51 helpful marketing tips was tested against Drayton Bird's 101 helpful marketing tips. Pretty stupid. I suppose you expected me to come along and tell you really useful stuff, didn't you? Sorry, wrong place. Okay, who thinks that A would have done better than B? Two people think that A would have done. 3. How many more? Any more? A did better than B. What happened was that my partner Alistair, who's in charge of all this stuff to do with the internet that I don't understand because I've only just mastered the intricacies of the fountain pen, I kept on saying, why the bloody hell, Alistair, you... Sorry, I'm going to say something rude in a minute. Idiot. Have you still got 51 bloody helpful marketing tips on the sodding website? And he said, because I've tested it and it works better. Go figure. Which one does better? A or B? A. Who thinks A does better than B? Who thinks B does better than A? Who doesn't give a shit? What can I tell you? B did better than A by about 30%. I don't know why. I don't know why people do the things they do. They're bloody consumers, customers, people. Very, very irritating and capricious. Unfortunately, you know the story, I assume you all know the story about Willie Sutton, you know, the New York thief, the burglar, used to rob banks. You know the story? Well, for those of you who don't, after he'd been caught for the umpteenth time, a policeman said to him, why do you keep robbing banks, Willie? And he said, that's where the money is. That's where the money is. Peter Drucker remarked that there is only one profit centre in business, it is your customer. Yeah? So you have to try and understand what they're all up to. I'm just going to show you this. Don't worry, I'm coming to the end. I'm coming to the end. I will come to the end, then I will do a 35-minute pitch on why you should buy stuff from me. If any of you have any money left. No, but you see, what you do, I'm cheap. I'm from Lancashire, I'm cheap as chips. So you can all afford a little bit of Drayton Bird. You may regret it. So I have a client who actually rang me up just before I left for New York and said, would I write some more advertisements for him? And this is an envelope, and I'm showing you it because I want to draw your attention to something that I think is important. The purpose of the envelope, well actually Bill Jamie was, who introduced me to speaking, really, to international speaking. We were speaking in Monte Carlo, and somebody said to him, what's the purpose of the envelope line, you know, Bill? And Bill said, the envelope line, he said, is the hot pants on the hooker. He said, the purpose of the envelope line, and this applies to some degree to a subject line, yeah, is to give you some hint of what's to come, yeah, but not tell you so much that you're not going to keep going. So this is to sell tours of the battlefields of World War I and World War II. Retrace the footsteps of heroes is what I wrote there. The envelope, believe it or not, was designed by the lady I've just been mentioning, my partner, who taught herself to do Mac design in 2 days just by watching somebody. I'm just going to read you a bit. You see there's a bit from the managing director. Book now, blah, blah, blah. There's the offer, yeah? You won't go far wrong by making sure that you've got your incentive at the beginning. Then it says, see the places where glory was born and men and women died for freedom. What would you say is the difference between a good holiday and one you remember for years? It's more than places, is it not? It's the stories about what happened in those places and seeing exactly where they happened. Look, this is where Adolf Hitler served as a corporal in 1914. See the graffiti in this graveyard? They were done 90 years ago by British Tommies. Just over there, Rudyard Kipling's heart was broken, for his only son died here. From here, Napoleon saw his dreams of empire vanish forever at Waterloo. This little white-fronted inn was Wellington's headquarters, where he wrote his account of the victory. We are now about to enter the Führer's bunker area, scene of his suicide. And this is the exact place where the Germans surrendered to Marshal Zhukov. I'm telling stories, yeah? If you want to persuade people to do things, you know, you've got to try and do a demonstration, do what a guide would say if he was taking somebody around, yeah? But you notice all that copy is very emotional, yeah? Rudyard Kipling's heart was broken. Yeah? So everyone else has got a formula. This is my formula. Because I'm so useless on a computer, I couldn't actually write it down this morning. But you can write it down. It's very simple. The reason I couldn't do it is I can do an E, I can write an E, you know, but I can't write the little 2 that says squared. It's pathetic. Bloody pathetic. How did I get here? The guy can't even... Very sad. So E squared times R. Yeah? E squared times R equals P. E squared times R equals P. E stands for emotion. Nobody does things for logical reasons. They do things for emotional reasons, and then they justify them, they rationalize them, yeah? R stands for relevance. People imagine that the secret of effective communications is creativity. Well, I've written speeches, books, scripts, you bloody well name it, everything you can think of I've written. I wrote, my first book was a novel, and my partner read it about 3 years ago, and she said to me, I kept on reading it, waiting for something to happen. So it got published, it got very good reviews, but you didn't care, because nothing ever bloody happened, you know, beautifully written sort of thing. And it's just all kind of writing, you know, if it's going to be any good, you've got to make sure that people want to know what's going to happen next, yeah? What's going to happen next? But relevance, yeah? Something about you. I quoted Harvey Mackay, something you know about your customer may be more important than anything you know about your product. So it's emotional, yeah? That's the most important element. If you want to, this formula, and this is a joke, but it's not a joke, I'm dead serious. Emotion squared times relevance equals profit, yeah? If you wish to start a business, or if you wish to understand how your business should do better, or if you wish to solve a marketing problem of any kind whatsoever, yeah? In any industry, in any country, anywhere in the world, yeah? Those are the only things you have to worry about. Can I find some very, very strong emotion, yeah, that applies to certain people, which is where the relevance comes in, because if you can, you will make a lot of money. All you have to do is sit there and think, is there something that's driving people crazy? Is there something that's frustrating people? Yeah? It can be very simple. The only reason I'm standing here, of course, is that I'm an expert. You know the definition of an expert, don't you? I've just given you a demonstration. Yeah. Somebody from out of town who knows nothing about this subject, but has lots of slides. Now, if you want to, would anyone here like to be an expert? I normally get paid for this, but I don't know, I came to the wrong place. All you've got to do is to find something so obscure and boring that nobody's bothered to write about it before. So what I actually did in 1982 is I saw everyone was getting interested in direct marketing, and I couldn't find a simple definition. The best definition was 1.5 pages in an American magazine called, believe it or not, Direct Marketing. And you had to, it was like a map of the New York subway system. Boxes and arrows and this, that, and the other. I thought, it can't be that bloody complicated. I thought, if I write down what it is and make it reasonably entertaining, I'll be all right. So I thought, well, essentially, it's just any communication that goes directly to people or that they respond directly to, yeah? And thus I became an expert. Helps to be simple-minded, by the way, if you want to be an expert. So that's my formula. It really will solve just about anything. Don't forget you can get these. Now, I have to explain to you that when I was young, my parents sent me to a public school, which, being perverse in the way that they are, is what the English call private schools. Their intention was to turn me into a gentleman, in which they failed miserably. But one of the things when I was young, you know, is that gentlemen did not go into trade. Don't tell me you're in trade. You mean you actually have to work for a living? Do you sell things? So it's very alien to my nature to sell anything, so I'm not going to spend much time selling things to you. I've sort of been terribly impressed with the way everyone sells things here. It's wonderful. Thank you very much for being so patient. Thank you.